Hello, everyone. Before we begin our descent, make sure to like and subscribe to Hush Ledger. Leaving a comment telling us where you're listening from helps the algorithm keep you in the dark with us. Now, let's begin. Story 1. My roommate started speaking a language she didn't know. When I transferred to Whitfield University for the fall semester, I thought the worst part would be the tuition. Turns out, the worst part was my roommate, Elise. Or rather, what she became. Whitfield's dorms were built in the 70s. Lime green linoleum, buzzing ceiling lights, and those clunky radiators that sounded like someone tried to claw their way out of the wall. I was placed in Bennett Hall, room 512. 5th floor, into the hall. Far from the elevators, far from everyone. Elise moved in 2 days after me. She was an English major, quiet but friendly. Auburn hair, big round glasses that always slid down her nose when she read. She unpacked slowly, every motion neat, folding socks, lining up books alphabetically. She had this habit of humming under her breath, a tune I never recognized but somehow couldn't forget. The first week was standard college chaos. Noise from the quad, cheap pizza boxes stacked high, late-night cramming sessions. But by the second week, things started to shift. Subtle at first. It began with her talking in her sleep. The first night, I heard it around 3 a.m., soft, muffled words. I thought it was just normal sleep talking, but when I got up for a drink, I heard her clearly. She was whispering in some language I didn't know. Harsh consonants, breathy vowels. It didn't sound like any language class I'd ever heard. Not Spanish, not French. More like something older. "Hey, Elise," I whispered, thinking she might wake up. But she didn't. She just kept murmuring faster, almost like chanting. The next morning, I joked about it while we brushed our teeth. She looked at me through the mirror, toothbrush in her hand, and said, "I don't speak any other language." I laughed it off. She didn't. The third night, she did it again. Louder. I lay there listening, heart thudding. It wasn't random sounds anymore. It was structured, rhythmic. She kept repeating a name, or a word. "Toloman, I think," she said, over and over. By the end of the week, the air in our room felt heavy. There was this smell, too, like wet copper and old dirt. I cleaned everything, sprayed Lysol, opened the window, but came back every night around 2:45 a.m., just before she began whispering again. Then came the drawings. Elise always carried a small notebook, the kind with a black elastic band. I caught sight of it one morning when she left for class. Inside were sketches of faces, long, thin ones with hollow eyes, and symbols. Angular shapes. I left my phone on record on my nightstand, screen down. She started around 3:02 a.m. The whispering again, only this time punctuated by a soft thumping sound, like someone knocking under the bed. I froze. When I listened to the recording the next day, there was definitely something in the background. Not footsteps, but sliding, like fabric dragging across the floor. And this is what chilled me. It wasn't just Elise's voice. There was a second one, deeper, slower, responding to her in the same strange language. I confronted her that morning. She denied everything, but her hand shook. I told her about the voices, the language, the recordings. She just stared at me and said, almost apologetically, "If it talks back, don't answer." I moved my desk chair against my door that night. Around 2:30 a.m., I felt pressure against my mattress, like someone had sat down beside me. I didn't move. My body stiffened. The room was ice cold, though the radiator was hissing hot. Elise's breathing had changed, slower, deliberate. Then, in that same inhuman tone, she started again. Only this time, she was awake. I saw her silhouette, sitting upright in her bed, face turned toward the ceiling, whispering, responding. I whispered her name. She stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the chanting. I thought maybe she'd snapped out of it, until the lights flickered and I heard a voice, right between us, say that name she'd been repeating. Tulamin. I left in the morning, packed everything, told the RA she was having some sort of breakdown. They said they'd check on her. 3 days later, campus police sealed off room 512. There'd been a medical emergency. They never confirmed what happened, but rumor was they found Elise sitting cross-legged on her bed, eyes open, mouth moving silently, pages from her notebook covering the walls. And written across the ceiling in what looked like rust was one word. Tulamin. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I still hear it whispered in my head. And when I do, I make sure not to answer. Story 2. The mirror above my bed. I never wanted to live on campus. My parents insisted, begging me to get the full college experience. So, I landed in Eastwood Hall, room 318, a shoebox-sized single directly beneath a grinding, antiquated heating pipe. The room was always too warm, paint bubbling near the ceiling. But the worst part wasn't the heat. It was the mirror. It hung directly above my bed, thick-framed, tinted at the edges. The glass was just slightly warped, like it had absorbed a century of steam and secrets from past tenants. When I moved in, I tried to take it down, but the screws were rusted solid. My RA said it was glued to the plaster during a renovation in the 90s. Vintage character, she shrugged. I tried to ignore it. At first, I did. Term started, and my routine stabilized. Classes, work study at the library, ramen at 11 p.m. every night. But nights got strange. Every morning, I woke up facing the mirror, even if I swore I'd fallen asleep facing away. Sometimes I'd catch smudges near my reflection, long, grayish streaks like fingerprints, but my arms couldn't reach that high. It was the fourth Friday when the dreams began. The first one, I was lying in my bed, staring up at the mirror, but my reflection was smiling back at me. The grin was too wide, and its eyes moved a beat slower than mine. I woke drenched in sweat, that sour, greasy warmth clinging to me. That weekend, I started sleeping with the window cracked, hoping for relief. But the air that drifted in at night was thick, musty, and carried an inexplicable smell, like someone peeling old oranges mixed with something rotten. My friend joked, said I was just adjusting. Just throw a bedsheet over it, one suggested. So I did. Tacked an old flag from home across the glass. But in the still center of the night, the flag would wind up on the floor, perfectly folded, like someone had peeled it down for a better view. No draft. No one with a key but me. The real terror started on a Sunday, the morning after my birthday. I woke to fingernail scratches on the wall behind my head, faint but unmistakable, and on the glass, a single handprint, pressed flat, too large to be mine. I started seeing things in the mirror, not always full shapes, shadows that moved just behind my shoulder, pale flashes flitting through the corners. Sometimes I'd blink and see another person's eye, just for a moment, before it was me again. Night after night, the dreams got worse. My reflection would sit up when I didn't. Once I watched it crawl across the ceiling, limbs contorting, mouth open as if screaming, but no sound came through. I'd tear my eyes away, only to wake covered in scratches that ached like sunburns. Sleep deprivation caught up fast. I fell asleep in the library, snapped awake to the mirrored shimmer of the security camera domes above me. Even my friend said I looked wrong, tired, pale, jumpy. "You're acting like someone's watching you," my roommate from home joked over FaceTime. After that, I stopped calling home. The last night in that room, I tried everything. Salt along the window, standing water by the door. I cleaned the mirror with vinegar while muttering every prayer I half remembered from childhood. It only got worse. At precisely 3:18 a.m., room number, I noticed I woke paralyzed. Couldn't move, couldn't scream. The mirror above me was dark, the glass rippling. My own reflection leaned out toward me, face expressionless. Then it started tapping on the other side, 5 slow taps, perfectly synchronized with the pulsing of blood in my ears. With one final convulsive jerk, I broke free, scrambled out of bed, grabbed my backpack, and didn't look up. I left everything but a few clothes behind and spent the night in the lounge under harsh white lights, surrounded by people. I never went back alone. Maintenance covered the mirror with plywood a week later when a new student moved in. I caught up with her once, months after I'd transferred dorms. She said she'd seen scratches under the paint when she hung her photos. Some nights, she swears she hears someone tapping back, just behind her headboard. If you ever find a mirror plastered to a dorm wall, sleep with the lights on. And never, ever let your reflection make the first move. The night the power went out. There's a kind of silence that only happens when the power dies at night. It's thicker, more animal. Not just the absence of sound, but a presence like something big and slow is holding its breath just outside your door. It happened in November, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving break. I lived in Redwood Hall, a relic built in the 1950s, all cinder block and echoes, with pipes that rattled like loose teeth. My roommate, Sam, was gone for the weekend. It was just me, my calculus notes, and the glow of my desk lamp. At 11:17 p.m., everything snapped off at once. Electric whine, heater clunk, even the buzzing from my laptop fan gone. The only light came from the orange eyes of the exit sign in the hallway, bleeding under our door. At first, I didn't worry. Power outages were common at Redwood. I checked my phone, 3% battery, because of course I'd forgotten to charge it. Cellular signal, 0 bars. I opened the door. Voices slipped down the corridor, other students laughing, some cursing, one guy shouting to bring the Weedles. A few doors down, someone cracked glow sticks and handed them out like relics from an older, dumber war. Then, as I turned back to my room, I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, past all the noise, in the gloom beneath the flickering emergency bulb, a figure stood, perfectly still. Could have been anyone. Someone's boyfriend waiting to be let in. Maybe a kid from the third floor. I squinted, tried to wave. In return, nothing. No movement. No sound. Just watching. My chest tightened in a way I can't explain. The air smelled wrong. Wet drywall and something sharper like burnt sugar. I pretended I hadn't seen them, closed my door, and locked it. My mind kept returning to the figure, tall and blurry at the edge of the weak light. With the power out, all bets were off. Doors didn't lock automatically. The cameras were down, and security calls would go unanswered. Thump! A single, heavy step in the hallway. Then another. I braced against my bed, listening as footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. They stopped right outside my door. I tried to call out, something easy like, "You okay out there?" But my throat was sandpaper. Whoever it was didn't answer. Just stood there. I could hear them breathing, an ugly, wet rasp, loud enough to drown out the faint laughter down the hall. Another thump, now scratching, dragging along the wood of the door, right where the cheap lock sat. I reached for my phone, only to watch it die, leaving me with nothing but the black glass and my own heartbeat. Minutes kicked by, slow and thick. The scratching stopped, replaced by a quiet tap, tap, tap. First at the bottom hinge, then midway up, then somehow right beside my ear, as if the person was crouched, their face level with the peephole. I pressed a pillow to my face, muffling the urge to scream. Faintly, through the door, I heard breathing. I counted 7 long breaths, each one heavier than the last. Then nothing. The next morning, the power came back at 7:18 a.m., floodlights blinking into my room. When I finally opened my door, there was nothing there. No sign of anyone, except at eye level, 3 straight scratches across the wood, deep enough to groove the cheap veneer. Security said it was probably a prank. But some nights, even now, if the power flickers, I remember that scraping sound, and I feel someone, waiting just outside the light. Sometimes you pray for noise, because silence means they're listening. If you have a story you'd like to share with a ledger, send it to our email. The link is in the description below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more true horror stories every week. You're not just listening, you're bearing witness. Good night.